Attorney Kratz. State will call Leslie Eisenberg to the stand. The clerk, please raise your right hand. Leslie Eisenberg, called as a witness herein, having first duly sworn, was examined and testified as follows. The clerk, please be seated. Please state your name, spell your last name for the record. The witness, my name is Leslie Eisenberg, Eisenberg. Direct examination by Attorney Kratz. How are you employed, ma'am? Answer, I'm sorry. Question, how are you employed? Answer, I am currently employed by the Wisconsin Historical Society in Madison and as a program coordinator for the state's burial site preservation program. Question, did you enjoy any titles at this time? Answer, yes, I have a doctorate in anthropology and am also board certified in forensic anthropology. Question, in front of you, Dr. Eisenberg, is an exhibit. It's actually a 16-page exhibit, which is referred to as a curriculum vitae, or what most people would call a resume. A 16-page resume. Do you see that? Answer, yes, I do. Question, does that resume include your educational background, your training, and your experience, including writings that you have personally and collaboratively been involved in that allow you to speak as an expert witness in matters of anthropology? Answer, it does, sir. Attorney Kratz, ask for a stipulation as to her qualifications. Move the admission of Exhibit 10, Judge. The Court, any objection? Attorney Loy, no objection. The Court will accept her as an expert and admit Exhibit 10. Question by Attorney Kratz. Dr. Eisenberg, were you asked to review some material that was found at what's now been referred to as the Avery Salvage Yard, and did you, in fact, agree to review that material? Answer, yes, I did. Question, could you answer, please, how it was that you were asked, and specifically, what it was that you did with that material? Answer, I was initially contacted on Wednesday, November 9th, through a telephone message by my special agent from the Division of Criminal Investigation, State of Wisconsin, Department of Justice, who indicated that she would be bringing to me a box of items that were recovered from the Avery Property for my examination. I took possession of those remains on November 10th and transferred them to the Dane County Coroner's Office in Madison, the morgue facility, where I examined those remains and sorted them into and identified them as human remains and other items which were bagged separately. Question, all right. Did you then separate the human remains from what you believe to be non-human remains? Answer, I did. Question, and regarding the human remains, what you describe in a little more detail, could you describe in a little more detail what it was that you observed? Answer, yes. When I opened the box containing all the material I first examined on November 10th, there were many fragments of human bones, some as small or smaller than the size of a nickel, other fragments perhaps as long as 4 or 5 inches. None of those fragments represented an entire bone, but they did represent almost every segment of the human skeleton, at least in part. Question, do you know how many bone fragments, just roughly, it is that you examined? Answer, I have not made a count at this time, and the reason I have not done that is because I am in the process of trying to refit those fragments together, to look for any other evidence, other than burning, on the fragments that I have observed. Question. You indicated that there were fragments, both small and larger, but none, at least to your independent recollection, longer than 4 or 5 inches. Is that right? Answer. That's correct. Question. Did it appear to you that these fragments, either intentionally or otherwise, had somehow degraded or been changed from their original skeletal state? Answer. Yes, sir, they have. Because of the breakage and the coloration, it was obvious to me when I opened the box that the human remains, the bone fragments, had undergone considerable heat and burning. Question. And so we're clear from what is commonly referred to as mutilation. The question that I have of you is, did these bones appear to have been altered in some way? Again, rather, either by human or other forces, so that they took a shape other than what a corpse may look like that was not altered. Do you understand the question? Answer. I do. And in response, I would say that the normal skeleton that I would expect to find was so altered by a burning episode as to render that skeleton into fragments. Question. All right. Dr. Eisenberg, were you able, and are you able, based upon your training, experience, education, and to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, identify those remains as being either male or female? Answer. Yes. I have been able to make a determination of sex. Question. And what, first of all, is that determination? Answer. That determination is that the fragmentary human remains presented to me for examination are those of an adult female. Question. And by an adult female, are you able to approximate the age of those remains? In other words, the age of the individual from which those remains come? Answer. At this juncture, I would like to reserve comment on that until I have completed my examination. Question. All right. So the court is clear that examination continues your analysis, not only for this particular case, but for the Division of Criminal Investigation you have asked to remain involved. Is that right? Answer. That is correct. Attorney Kratz. For this hearing, Judge, that's all the questions I have of Dr. Eisenberg. Thank you. The court. All right. Mr. Johnson. Attorney Johnson. Thank you. Cross-examination by Attorney Johnson. Question. Dr. Eisenberg, is there scientific literature that you reviewed in conjunction with the examination that you made in this case? Answer. Well, as I mentioned, I have not completed my examination, but yes, there is research that I have referred to and research that I already know of based on my years in the field. Question. And in conjunction with this examination, what literature did you refer to? What scientific literature? Answer. Literature involving signatures of possible antemortem bone trauma in burned remains. Question. Do you have the name of those articles or those treatises? Attorney Kratz. Objection. Discovery, Judge. The court. Sustained. Question by Attorney Johnson. The examination that you did, first of all, you received these items from a DCI agent. Is that right? Answer. That is correct. Question. And who was that? Answer. The name of the special agent was Duranda Freymiller. Freymiller. Question. And you had received a phone call prior to receiving these, I take it? Answer. That is correct. Question. And who was the phone call from? Answer. It was a voicemail message left for me on my work answering machine from Special Agent Freymiller. Question. And you returned that call? Answer. I did not return that call because when I was out of town when the call came in, and I picked up that message in transit back to Madison. Question. Okay. Answer. After hours. Question. Okay. And then when did you actually receive the items? Answer. On Thursday morning, November 10th. Question. Okay. And this agent came to your workplace? Answer. The remains were left for me at my workplace, signed for by a coworker, and left in my locked office awaiting my arrival. Question. Okay. And they were in a box, is that what you said? Answer. At the time, I did not know it was in a box, but yes, I did receive a white, flat, rectangular box, identified with labels and other information on that box. And the box was in a brown grocery-type bag, presumably to transmit the box. Question. Okay. And then you take that box, then, to the morgue? The Dane County morgue, is that right? Answer. That is correct. Question. And that's where you opened it? Answer. That's correct. Question. And inside that box, are the items packaged inside that box separately? Answer. Within the box, there was one plastic bag into which several bone fragments had been placed by another forensic anthropologist, Dr. Kenneth Bennett, to whom the box was initially brought for a brief examination to determine whether the fragments in the box were of human origin. Question. Okay. And the color of that plastic bag was? Answer. Was clear. Question. Okay. Was that plastic bag sealed? Answer. In what way? Question. Sealed. Taped shut. There was some sort of seal on it. Anything like that? Answer. There was not a seal on that bag, but the bag was within the sealed box that was brought to me. And the box was sealed with evidence tape and was intact upon my receipt of the box. Question. Okay. How many items were there in the plastic bag? Answer. I did not count them. I simply laid them out during the sorting procedure I followed. Question. Okay. But 10? More than 10? More than 20? Do you have an estimate? Answer. I don't recall, I'm sorry. Question. Okay. How do you do an examination like this? Can you just sort of take me through the steps? Answer. The first thing I do is, wearing appropriate gloves and a mask and gown and so on, remove piece by piece from the box and sort them into piles representing human bone fragments and items of non-biological origin, like metal, plant material, and so on. Question. And how many Question. And how many items of non-biological origin were there here? Answer. I did not count them. I simply, with the initial sorting, segregated them into separate piles that were then put into separate bags that were labeled. Question. Okay. And then what do you do next? Answer. Well, it's a fairly slow process. There were many fragments in the box, and what I did was, at the end of the evening, grouped all of the human bone fragments together, was able to sort out dental structures, which may have represented fragments of jawbone and or tooth structures, and bagged those separately. At the end of the evening, I had several bags, one representing human bone and bone from different areas of the body, in addition to other non-biological types of items. Question. Okay. And you put each group of items in a separate bag? Answer. A separate labeled bag. That's correct. Question. And then, did you continue this examination the next day, I assume? Answer. I did. Question. Okay. And what's the next stage in it? Answer. If I may, Judge, may I refer to my timeline? Question. Is there something that would refresh your recollection? Attorney Kratz. Judge, perhaps I'll just interpose the objection that this goes well beyond the direct examination and the purpose for which it's being offered at the preliminary hearing. Attorney Johnson. Judge, if there's expert testimony that's been offered, I think on cross-examination, I'm entitled to go into the data on which that expert testimony is being offered under 907.05. The court. If there's a document that she's used to refresh her memory to testify today, I believe the defense is entitled to see that. Is it here? Attorney Kratz. Has he asked that question? Attorney Johnson. Well, I guess Attorney Kratz. She asked if she could look at it. Attorney Johnson. Let me see if I can clarify this. Question by Attorney Johnson. Would it refresh your recollection to refer to the timeline that you prepared in conjunction with this examination? Answer. It would, but certainly I can speak through the timeline. From the initial receipt of the remains on November 10th, the remains actually coming into my possession on successive days after the 10th, I spent several to many hours continuing my examination, not only of the remains that were initially brought to me on November 9th, but additional remains that had been collected by the Division of Criminal Investigation on the same property, from which the original box of fragments came. Question. Okay. Answer. So the examination continued using the same basic sorting procedure. Question. Okay. The question that I had asked was, the next day, what did you do? And I guess that's my question at this point. The next day, how did you continue that process? Answer. The next day, I continued to sort. This is a very slow process. It's very detailed and meticulous process, and not something that's easily completed in just several hours. Question. Okay, and are you consulting anything as you are doing this sorting? Or any treatises? Any material, any reference material? Answer. No, sir. Question. Okay. How long would you say this process of sorting took you? Do you have an estimate at all? Answer. Well, I'm still in the process of sorting. Question. Okay. Is this a situation where you basically are sorting these fragments and you can offer an opinion as to their origin purely by a visual examination? Answer. That is correct. Question. Okay. Is there any other type of testing that you would do to confirm that visual examination? Answer. None that I believe is necessary, given my experience in analyzing human remains, not only from a forensic context, but from some of the disaster contexts with which I have been involved in this country. Question. Okay. And I'm sorry if this has been answered before. How long have you been doing this? How many years? Answer. I began consulting in forensic anthropology in 1986 for the Office of Chief Medical Examiner in New York. Question. Okay, now, you were able to offer an opinion that these remains, you believe, come from an adult female. Is that right? Answer. That is correct, sir. Question. And how do you come to that conclusion? What is it about them? Attorney Kratz. Judge, the court. I'm going to allow this question. she can explain how she came to her conclusion. Attorney Kratz: That's fine. Answer: There are, as forensic anthropologists, certain landmarks and certain shapes, what we call morphology, that differ between male and female skeletons. And there are certain landmarks that I find, even though they are fragmentary in the human remains, that I have been able to identify as being of the shape and form and size that I believe to come from a female. Question: And what landmarks specifically are you referring to? Answer: Two in particular, although because my analysis is not completed, there may yet be others. But there are fragments from what we call the brow ridge above the eye socket on both sides of the skull, above both orbits, as well as an elbow joint at the top end of one of the lower arm bones, the radius. Question: And what would be the difference? I mean, how would that lead you to the conclusion that it was female? Answer: In female skulls, the shape of the upper rim of the eye socket is not very robust or very heavy looking. It's actually fairly gracile, very small, and has a sharp margin. And I see that sharp margin on both fragments of the skull of the upper eye area. And the head of the radius, or the part of the lower arm bones that forms part of the elbow joint, is also a very small size. Question: Now, is there a particular standard by which you would judge this to be a female? I mean, below a certain size it has got to be a female. Above a certain size you would offer the opinion it's a male. I'm talking about the radius. Answer: That's correct. That would apply to the radial head, the radius head. And there has been a study done that addresses just that issue. Question: And what is that size? Answer: At the present time, I don't have that number in my head to report to you. Question: Okay. And would that study you referred to, do you know the name of that study? Answer: I don't know the name of the article. I do know the name of the author. I'm quite sure if I know how to pronounce the last name. I'm not quite sure if I know how to pronounce the last name. First name is Emily. The last name is something like Barras-Bieta. It's an article that was published, I believe, in the Journal of Forensic Science. Question: And is that dealing with averages, or, is there sort of like a cutoff? Do you understand my question? Answer: Yes, I do. Attorney Kratz: Judge, excuse me, my objection is this goes more to weight than to admissibility. The court: At this point, the court will sustain the objection. Attorney Kratz: Thank you, Judge. By Attorney Johnson: What about with regard to the orbital bone? Is there a similar type of standard there as to what you described that would lead you to believe it's a female? Answer: It's not a metric or measurable kind of standard. It's an observational kind of standard that we all base our work on. Question: So, it's a subjective call on your part? Answer: I do not believe it's a subjective call simply because it cannot be measured. Question: Okay, what are you looking for in that particular bone? The thickness, the length from side to side? Answer: To which bone are you referring, sir? Question: The orbital. Answer: It's the sharp edge. The fact that there's not a heavy and protruding brow ridge on top of it. Question: Okay. And so that would be true, generally, of females? Answer: That is correct. Question: Okay. And is that same article that you referred to before the basis for for your opinion on that bone as well, or is answer. The article previously mentioned about the radius head does not at all address using the orbital bone to determine sex. Question. Okay. Is there another learned treatise or piece of scientific literature that you would have reviewed relative to the orbital bone? Attorney Kratz. Objection. Discovery. The court. The objection is sustained. Attorney Kratz. Thank you. Question by Attorney Johnson. Now, are there other tests that you have performed on these items? Other like chemical tests or anything like? Answer. No, sir. Question. All just been a visual examination? Answer. That's correct. Question. Okay. Answer. May I qualify that? I have also had an opportunity to have the fragments of the skull that were presented for analysis x-rayed. Question. Okay. And where did that take place? Answer. That took place on November 17th at the Middleton Memorial Veterans Hospital in Madison. Question. Okay. And what did you find out as a result of those x-rays? Answer. As a result of those x-rays, several of the cranial fragments, at least 7 of them, showed evidence for areas with a greater density than the bone itself. In other words, they were small, tiny areas, almost flecks, that appeared wider in the x-ray than the surrounding bone. Court reporter asked for clarification. Answer. Wider. Question. You examined these x-rays yourself, is that right? Answer. That's correct, but I was not the only one in the room at the time. Question. Okay. Was there a radiologist or someone who was helping you interpret those? Answer. There was a radiology technician. There was also a forensic pathologist in the room at the same time. Question. Okay, who was that? Answer. His name is Dr. Michael Steyer, S-T-I-E-R. Question. He is with the Dane County? Answer. He is with the court. The court is going to impose its own objection. Attorney Johnson. Okay. The court. It's discovery. Question by Attorney Johnson. And what do those findings tell you, if anything? Answer. At the moment, I am not at a point where I can comment on what those mean. At this point, there are areas in those bones that are more dense than the bone itself. It's unknown at this time what those densities represent. Question. Okay. And do you know what part of the skull those came from? The court. Again, just a minute. The court is going to interpose its own objection. The witness has testified that, at least at this point, the significance of it is unknown, so it adds nothing to this hearing. Attorney Johnson. Okay. Question by Attorney Johnson. Do you recall what the substance of the voicemail message was that was left for you by the special agent? Attorney Kratz. Objection. Discovery, Your Honor. The court. What's the purpose of the question? Attorney Johnson. Well, I'm trying to figure out if there was something that was told to her about the items that she was going to be asked to look at. Was it told to her that these were human remains? Remains of unknown origin? What exactly was told to her? Attorney Kratz. If I may judge, and if there were, and if they were, that will go to weight, not admissibility. The court. The court agrees. The objection is sustained. Question by Attorney Johnson. Were these items that you examined, you indicate that they were all badly burned, is that right? Answer. That is correct. Question. And you can see that through a visual examination? Answer. That is correct. Most all of the bone was blackened from burning. Question. Okay. Is there any kind of chemical analysis you did to confirm that? Answer. No, and that is really outside of the range of my expertise. Question. Okay. So this is, again, it's a visual examination that tells you, through your training and experience, that this is from burns. Answer. That is correct. Question. And you have had experience in examining human remains before from burn victims? Answer. Yes, I have had a number of forensic cases, as well as some of the federal disaster work I have done involving a train crash in Illinois, the aftermath of the World Trade Center disaster. And so I have had occasion to look at many types of burned and fragmentary human remains. Question. Would you have an estimate as to how many times? Answer. I do not have an exact number for you. Attorney Johnson. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you. The court. Any redirect? Attorney Kratz. No, Judge. Thank you. The court. The witness is excused. The witness. Thank you. Attorney Kratz. State will call Sherry Culhane to the stand.